What's going on, everybody? It's me, your favorite little boy in the whole wide world, Ren with 2 N's. I am very excited to be doing this video. I grew up playing the Tomb Raider games, but after I grew up, I played the Uncharted games, and I can't help but compare these two franchises against one another whenever I play them. So I wanted to use this video to try and answer the age-old classic question, which is better, Uncharted or Tomb Raider? And for the purposes of this video, I stuck to comparing the two most recent games in each franchise. If you look at both games on Metacritic, Uncharted takes the lead by a little bit. However, they are pretty close. But despite the critical praise, it's no surprise that there are a lot of people out there who disagree with all the critics.
Uncharted 4 just released, and after playing through all the Uncharted games, I had to get something off my chest. Tomb Raider is so much better.
Some people out there also say that these are two very different games and should not be compared against one another, but I strongly disagree. These games share a lot of similarities.
What the hell?
Empty. It's empty.
They both have a very similar story structure. Both franchises also have an emphasis on platforming, combat, and actually, you know what? Don't take my word for it. Listen to the developers.
And we had this idea of the game was going to be 3 pillars. It was going to be combat, traversal, and puzzles.
I say.
That was really exciting because we've shown just small sections of our game, and it's a very well-rounded mix of our 3 pillars of traversal, puzzle solving, combat.
If that doesn't show how similar these two franchises are, then I don't know what will. So with that out of the way, let's dive straight into the topic at hand and take a real close and objective look at each franchise. Is Tomb Raider more better, or is it Uncharted? Let's get it started. So in each game, both of our characters have a vast arsenal of moves and weaponry that they can use to eliminate the hundreds of bad guys that they come across throughout the game. However, one of our characters here is more skilled than the other. During combat, Lara can only fire her gun while aiming down sights, and that's it. She can't blind fire or shoot from the nip, things that have been very standard in third-person shooters for well over 5 years at this point. She just can't do them. But Nathan Drake, on the other hand, the guy can do it all. He can shoot from the hip, he can shoot while hanging on a platform, and blind fire while hanging from a platform. He can shoot while jumping through the air, which is pretty dope. He can shoot while he's swinging from a rope. And he can shoot while he's sliding down a slope. He can blind fire like in the Book of Eli. He can even fire from the water. And of course, he can shoot while aiming down sights. Nathan can also throw grenades from each of the scenarios I just listed. Lara, on the other hand, can only throw an object once she has picked it up or crafted it. And of course, can only throw these objects while aiming down sights. Having the ability to shoot from literally any position gives you a lot of choices for taking out enemies, and it makes each encounter feel different and fresh, even on subsequent playthroughs, as you have a countless number of things you can do to win each fight. Being forced to shoot while only holding the left trigger is very limiting. It gives you way fewer options to use when deciding how to approach combat encounters and adapt to new situations. To make up for that though, Lara does have a wide variety of weapons to use.
Firstly, Lara's arsenal is tremendously better than Nathan freaking Drake's. At any given time, she can launch a volley of fire arrows to annihilate her enemies. What's that? Fire isn't enough? Well, let's slap some goddamn poison gas to the ends of those arrows and watch us melt the villains' faces. Let's go next level and poison some poor unsuspecting rabbit. That'll teach them to cross our path. I mean, look at the armory on Lara's back. None of this, I'll find weapons as I fight bullcrap.
You know, I actually like the fact that you have to use weapons that you pick up from the ground. I think it adds to the overall game by making you feel more like Nathan Drake. It forces you to get out from behind cover and go and find more ammo. It causes you to be a little more creative and make decisions on the fly. Do I keep my AK-47 with 25 shots? Or do I pick up a grenade launcher with 4 shots? It always feels like you're improvising, coming up with new plans off the cuff. Well, now I'm almost out of ammo, so let me get the high ground on this guy so I can take him down and grab his gun. Now, oh shit, now I'm exposed. I gotta go get some new cover. It all feels very dynamic. And when you pull off a bunch of awesome moves and survive, it feels pretty badass. Naughty Dog went through great lengths to make sure that sitting behind one piece of cover was not an option. They even flat out removed a mechanic from Uncharted 3 where Nate was able to throw grenades back at his enemies. So now when a grenade gets tossed your direction, you have to move, you have to find new cover, and you have to start making decisions. So even if you count Lara's poison, fire, and explosive arrows, she only has access to 26 total weapons in the game. There are 5 additional weapons you can get, but you need to purchase some DLC in order to access them. In Uncharted 4, if you only count the weapons that are accessible in single player, which is fair, there are exactly 30 weapons that Nathan Drake can toy around with. So, sorry buddy, but I think you've lost your credibility. It's time to say goodbye. While Lara does have the option to hold on to 4 different weapons at once, I think that this actually hurts the gameplay quite a bit, because it means that you're ready for literally any and every combat scenario that the game can throw at you. It means that you can just sit behind cover the whole time while the genius AI literally runs straight at you in a straight line. So you see him coming, so you swap to the shotgun, pop up, take him out real quick. Then there's a guy who's far away, so you switch to an assault rifle, take that guy out. Uh-oh, now we're out of ammo. Well, that's okay, because all we gotta do is just stay right here behind cover, craft some explosive arrows, and blow everybody up. And then sometimes you have to dodge the occasional grenade that does come your way. So since you already have everything at your disposal, even on the hardest difficulty, it takes away any decision making or challenge by trivializing these combat sections. And honestly, it makes some of them feel kinda tedious. It doesn't allow for any creativity or on-the-spot decision-making. And the fact that Lara can't shoot while running or jumping around makes staying behind one piece of cover your best bet. Stealth sections are also pretty easy in Tomb Raider, even on the hardest difficulty where enemies are supposed to be more alert. I had no trouble getting up to a good vantage point and just taking everybody down with the bow and arrow, especially since you got these poison arrows that can wipe out an entire group of enemies with absolutely zero effort. And if you run out of poison arrows, well, don't go anywhere, stay exactly where you are, and craft some more. Now, I can definitely see where some people would find this sort of thing empowering. You know, hunting down your prey while they have no idea you're there. But to me, it just feels too easy. It's about as easy as stealing a wheelchair from a homeless guy. The trick is, you follow him around, and you wait until he falls asleep. Then, you tip him over, grab the chair, and walk away. And that's the stealth of Tomb Raider in a nutshell. That's the best way I can describe it. The stealth in Uncharted is pretty easy too, though. The AI is also a little lackluster in the stealth department, but with that being said, the stealth is significantly more difficult in Uncharted, since you almost never have any silenced weapons. But this means that you have to think about the stealth sections more. You can tag the enemies, and then try to plan out the best route to take all these guys down without being seen. You really have to think about how you want to tackle each stealth section. And if you do get caught, you can run away, or find a new hiding spot, and reset the entire encounter back to stealth, and start taking everybody out again like a sneaky Susan. But the enemies will be at a more heightened alert level, since they already know you're around. On the whole though, the AI in Uncharted is very good, and it kinda has to be because of Nate's ability to shoot from anywhere. If you dangle from a ledge, they will come to you and try to stomp on your fingers to knock you down, or they'll just lob grenades at you and force you to move somewhere else. When enemies are aware of Nate's position, they will consistently and successfully try to flank you. Not only will they just flank you, but they'll try to flank you while finding the best route to try to stay out of your line of sight while doing so. There are times when one enemy will shoot at you to keep you suppressed, while another enemy tries to flank you. And of course, all of these things encourage you to get out of cover and stay mobile so that you can't be flanked. There were a good number of times where I felt like I had everything under control, and then all of a sudden there was a guy behind me trying to shoot me in the back. Stuff like that forces you to quickly react and adapt to the situation. It makes you use your brain a little bit, and it keeps you immersed into the game. It also makes it so that each time you replay the same combat scenario, it feels a little bit different. Now, the AI in Tomb Raider is decent enough. The enemies try to flank you sometimes. They have these callouts for whenever you reload,
She's reloading. Shoot her.
which I've never seen them take advantage of. They just sort of call out the fact that you're reloading. But then they also call out when they're the last remaining enemy left in the arena that you have to defeat.
Just you and me.
Which is honestly kinda dumb, because it tells me that I don't have to worry about getting shot by anybody else. So I can just pop up out of cover and take him out real quick with no worries. I feel like when the enemy calls things out, it just gives the illusion of good AI, when in all reality, the game has just realized that you've pressed the reload button, which triggers the nearest enemy to call that out. And, you know, while the AI is pretty decent most times, I still ran into several situations where the AI was just awful. So, in terms of combat, Uncharted wins. It beats out Tomb Raider because it's just so much more versatile and fun. There's nothing like swinging on a rope, shooting a guy while you're swinging, then jumping off of that rope to take out another guy, stealing that guy's gun, turning around and shooting more bad guys. Every single combat encounter has things in place for you and your enemies to climb on top of, places to swing from, places to jump onto people, and then there's this whole separate little melee mechanic that I didn't even talk about. Tomb Raider just feels really stiff, and the fact that you can only shoot while aiming down sights means that while you're behind cover, you need to pop up out of safety to shoot an enemy, which means that you will always take damage, which is kind of annoying, especially because you have a limited number of heals. The melee fights also don't feel very intuitive and are incredibly quick-timey. Now, Uncharted's melee system isn't very deep at all, but Tomb Raider's is almost non-existent. So with all that being said, point goes to Uncharted.
Yep, no surprises there.
I've always felt that the platforming was the weakest part of the Uncharted franchise. Now, that's not to say that it's bad, because it's not. It's usually just pretty bland and doesn't take any skill or effort. But in Uncharted 4, Naughty Dog really stepped up their game. Platforming is actually kind of fun. You've got a grappling hook now, and there's just something that's really fun about swinging from a big rope in a dangerous, wide open area. And on top of grappling around, you also get to slide down stuff. And it all feels really fun, especially when you seamlessly go from climbing to grappling to sliding and back to grappling again. Ledges and rails consistently break in classic Uncharted fashion, but it all feels a little bit too scripted to elicit an emotion from me. The animations for the platforming are fantastic though, and you have complete 360-degree control over where Nate's hands go, so you never wind up grabbing a ledge that you didn't mean to. The system they have in place is so freaking precise. Nate's arms are like a clock. You can make my boy Nathan Drake tell the time. And if he's moving too slow for you, or you've already beaten the game, and you just want to get through it as quick as possible, you can mash the X button and speed things up. If you try to do this in Tomb Raider and try to fast track Lara's progress by mashing the A button, 9 times out of 10 it usually doesn't work out. And in Uncharted, it's not always 100% clear where you're supposed to go, and sometimes there's more than one path to choose from. It makes you think a little bit about how you're going to get from point A to point B. It's nothing complex at all, it's all very, very simple, but it helps to keep you engaged. And the platforming still isn't all that exciting, but it's certainly an improvement over previous games. But in Tomb Raider, I found the platforming to be pretty dull. I was just kind of going through the motions, you know, jumping through the very linear sections, grabbing the very obviously highlighted white ledges, and Lara also does have a sort of grapple that she can use, but the grappling mechanic isn't nearly as fluid as it is in Uncharted. They all feel like very separate entities. Like you get to a wall, you climb up the wall, then you stand up, you pull out your bow and arrow, aim at the thing you gotta swing from, shoot it, and then you start swinging. And there are some parts where you gotta jump and push the X button so that she'll grapple that ledge and swing across it, but again, this is completely separate. You never go straight from climbing to grappling, and it all feels very basic. And Lara's animations are very lackluster. They wanted Lara to look and move as realistically as possible.
And our job for Rise of the Tomb Raider was to make her one of the most human and believable characters in games. And we started that with the reboot, and we're continuing with that in Rise.
Yet she can jump higher and farther than the freaking Master Chief. And I know that sounds like a nitpick, but it's really not. Because you spend a good chunk of the game just kind of climbing around. And while you're climbing around, there's nothing going on. So I have all the time in the world to think about why I'm not engaged with this game as I'm autopiloting my way through these platforming sections. In Uncharted, there's never a dry moment. There are lulls, and some parts are certainly much more exciting than others. But even the slowest parts of Uncharted have stuff going on. Whether it's collapsing bridges, multiple paths to choose from, or fun banter between the characters, it gives you something to listen to and think about while you mindlessly climb a big rock.
Alright, you think you can do that? What are you talking about? I taught you that move. Alright, let's see it then. There. You see? That was clumsy.
I know it definitely keeps me a little bit more engaged. I mean, it keeps me a whole lot more immersed into the game than this. Uncharted also changes things up every now and then and gives you more interesting things to climb on, like moving gears, or moving cars, or big old statues, you know, things like that. But in all fairness, there is this one part right here in Tomb Raider where you kind of climb around this observatory type thing, but that's about it. And it's over before you know it. So with that, I gotta give another point to Uncharted.
No, you shouldn't have.
Both of these games have pretty easy and basic puzzles. Uncharted certainly isn't afraid to hold your hand through these puzzles either, and that can definitely be annoying. They slow down the gameplay a bit, but for the most part they still keep me engaged, and I've never been stumped by a puzzle from Uncharted. On the other hand, Tomb Raider's puzzles are also very basic. The solution is usually very simple, but I think they are a bit more fun. They're usually physics-based puzzles, so they have you doing fun stuff like pushing minecarts down and making them go boom. They have you filling up rooms with water and then emptying other rooms full of water, things like that. And the puzzles are also just a little bit more challenging than the puzzles in Uncharted, so for that we give a point to Tomb Raider.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me. I practically had it.
So this part of the video will contain spoilers for both Tomb Raider and Uncharted 4. So, if you want to play through these games with your expectations unsullied, then I suggest that you skip ahead to this part of the video that's on screen right now. Starting now, you got 5 seconds to do so. Start the clock, Nate. Alright, you've been warned. Here we go. Let's start it off with Tomb Raider. Now, in the interest of time, I want to try and keep both games as brief as possible. So, in a nutshell, Lara and her Hawaiian friend Jonah are after an ancient artifact in the lost city of Katesh. Her father, Richard Croft, was also after this artifact when Lara was a child, but he committed suicide before he was able to find it. It's very, very important that you all know that Lara's father killed himself. They mention it throughout the game non-stop. It's basically all Lara talks about. Anyway, the game immediately starts us off in that one snow level from Modern Warfare 2. There are a lot of similarities to be drawn here, except it doesn't end in a snowmobile chase. It ends when Lara gets engulfed by an avalanche. Meanwhile, there's a big bad villain named Constantine. He's in charge of a private military group called Trinity, who is also after the artifact. He wants this artifact because his sister Anna has leukemia, and this trinket is said to have mystical powers that will cure any and all diseases, grant immortality, and all that jazz. I wonder where they got that idea from. Oh yeah, they got it from Uncharted 2. Anyway, I think the villain actually has a really good motivation, but beyond that, his character is very one-dimensional, which is fine for a villain. Uncharted 2 had a pretty one-dimensional villain as well, with an even weaker motivation, and that game turned out okay. So pretty early on in the game, Lara gets to the city of Katesh. Rather than finding out how to get there by globetrotting and solving ancient mysteries, she just shows up there with almost no explanation. But, you know, whatever. From there on out, it's pretty cut and dry. She learns that Anna, her dead dad's ex-lover, is in cahoots with Constantine and Trinity. Lara then gets imprisoned, escapes from prison with her new friend Jacob, who just turns out to be the leader of the lost city of Katesh. She then befriends all the locals of the lost city while helping them fight off Trinity. Hey, wait a second. That guy looks familiar. He was in the game earlier. He was dead. They totally reused that guy's character model from earlier in the game. That's kinda lazy. Meanwhile, we get these flashbacks to Lara's childhood when she's talking with her dad, and the voice acting in these is just the best.
Someday, you'll understand.
I don't want to understand. I just want you to stop. Be my dad again.
But here's where it gets interesting, okay? In one of these flashbacks, we see Lara walking in on her dad, who just shot himself.
Dad, is everything all right? Dad?
Except there's something really fishy about this scene. The first time I saw this, I thought to myself, oh, okay, so he didn't kill himself. I mean, think about it. We come into the room, we see Richard Croft perfectly, conveniently placed on the desk. And underneath him right there is the front page of that newspaper, perfectly on display for us to see. Add onto that the fact that somehow Richard still has a really commanding grip on that gun. Then, and here's the really telling part, the camera pans over to the open window, as if to insinuate that the killer has just escaped through this window. Everything about this sequence felt very strange to me. So, a friend of mine is a forensics analyst for the City of London's police department, and he really came through in a big way to help me out with this case. So he faxed me some top secret documentation of the crime scene. But before we look into those, we need to get our facts straight. According to this wiki page, Richard Croft weighed approximately 350 pounds, he was 5 feet and 10 inches tall, and had a penis that was the size of a can of Pringles. So, with all that in mind, let's take a look at these top secret documents, shall we? So, based on the way Richard is laying down on the desk when Lara walks into the room, we can see that the desk is about 3 feet long, as it takes up about half of Richard's height. We know that Richard was standing up when he got shot, so for his body to wind up in this position, he would have needed to be facing west when the bullet entered his left temporal lobe, since he used his left hand to do the deed, which is actually a nice little detail because in a previous flashback, Richard used his left hand to hang up the phone. This is conclusive proof that Richard was indeed a lefty and not a righty. But in order for him to fall onto the desk in that fashion, that would mean that when he stood up, he got as close to the desk as he possibly could, which is very impractical and very strange for somebody who's going to kill themselves. Now, while he was pressed all the way up against the desk like this, he pulled the trigger. Now, even if this were the case, even if he was stood up, facing left, pushed up against the desk as hard as he could be, he still would not have landed on the desk like he does in the photograph for a multitude of reasons. Firstly, the recoil of that gun would have forced his hand away from the desk, thus making it impossible for his left hand to drape over the desk as it does in this photograph. Secondly, as soon as you get shot in the head, you just instantly drop to the floor, everybody walk the dinosaur. And thirdly, that gun is not powerful enough to launch Richard's body over the desk like that. It's a standard civilian handgun outfitted with a 9mm round. It is not a Magnum. Even if it were a Magnum, his massive Pringle can penis would drag him down considerably and would not allow him to fall over the desk like that. The only way the positioning of this cadaver would be possible is if Richard got on top of his desk and laid down on it, went into an upward-facing baby seal position, then put the gun to the left side of his head and pulled the trigger. But if that were the case, then his head would be resting on its right side as opposed to its left due to the recoil of the gun. Even then, that doesn't explain how he's still holding onto the gun. None of it adds up, none of it makes any sense. They were forced to label the crime as a suicide because they were unable to find out who the killer was, or if there was a killer, what that killer's motive would be. And it didn't help that some of the evidence was tainted when some dumb little girl ran through the crime scene to get to the window. The media wanted answers, the police chief was quick to convict, so they dubbed it as a suicide and everybody moved on. Now, even without properly investigating this crime scene, as soon as I saw this scene play out for the first time, I thought that they had intentionally and obviously laid out all these very obvious clues in order to tell us, the audience, that her dad did not kill himself. Because everything was so obvious, I thought Lara also knew that her dad didn't kill himself. And then I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. That's why she's so eager to prove him right and it will clear his name. But later on in the game, when she's confronted by the information that her father was in fact murdered, she reacted in a way that surprised me.
Don't you walk away from me. Wait! Trinity killed your father!
No, you're lying.
But wouldn't this be exactly what she would want to hear? Why would she be so quick to dismiss this information? So, what I learned on my second playthrough of this game that I did for the purposes of this video, I realized that the camera panning toward the window and going toward the window wasn't to imply that her father's murderer escaped through that window. But this was instead a callback to an earlier flashback in the game where Lara climbed in through that window to get into her dad's office. The camera focusing on the window after the suicide was supposed to tell us that Lara ran away from home right after she saw her dead dad. Which is like, why would you walk straight past your dead, bloody dad to do that? I mean, come on, go out the front door. Come on. But the fact that Lara is so dismissive of this new information, that her dad was murdered, honestly kinda makes Lara look like an idiot. Because she refuses to believe something that we as an audience already know. I'm not saying that Lara is dumb. I'm saying that it just makes her seem dumb because of the piss poor writing and presentation. Anyway, moving along, Jonah the whale gets captured. Now Lara has to go out and save him. And then when she gets to where he's being held, he's being tortured for information. After Jonah got stabbed like an idiot, Jacob saves him with some magical fairy dust. Then Lara goes and kills a bunch of magical Greek soldiers that are guarding the artifact. Then Lara gets the artifact. Then Lara destroys the artifact. Then all of the magical Greek soldiers die, and that's it. Roll credits. The story is definitely not this game's strong suit. I think that part of the problem is that this game takes itself way too seriously. And when something gets too serious, it can become difficult to take it seriously. I found myself kind of chuckling at some of these cutscenes because of how expository they were. Found myself rolling my eyes a lot.
Reconsider my offer, Laura, before it's too late. It was too late the moment you betrayed my family.
But Uncharted does its tone really well. It's serious when it needs to be serious, and it's humorous when that's appropriate.
Okay, mango.
What are you on about?
Oh, it's my safe word.
But on top of that, a bunch of dumb stuff happens in these Tomb Raider cutscenes. Let me tell ya, like this scene right here, when the helicopter is chasing them in the car, why would it fly past the car, then go underneath the cliff, just so it could pop up in front of the car to shoot it? Also, when did it have the time to do that? Also, how did both of them not see where the helicopter went? Then later on, there's a scene where Lara catches up with Anna, so she decides to run up to Anna and hold her hostage. But somehow, during this time, she gets her leg magically wrapped up into all these ropes like fucking Gilligan, so that she can conveniently survive the situation. And then sometimes, they just can't be bothered to do another take.
What about your father? You're dooming him to be mocked by history. How can you let this go when you're so close?
The game is also full of some really bad dialogue.
You look terrible. Terrible, but happy.
Alright, let's move on to Uncharted, shall we? Naughty Dog has a reputation of telling critically acclaimed stories in video games, or at the very least, making top-notch movie-quality cutscenes. With great writing and amazing acting, I always want to watch it all the way through. They're perfectly crafted, they push the story forward, and they make you want to see what's going to happen next. Everything a cutscene needs to do, Naughty Dog does them perfectly. I feel like even if you really do enjoy Tomb Raider's story more than you enjoy Uncharted's, that you still gotta admit, the cutscenes in Uncharted are incredibly well done. Anyway, let me just briefly lay down Uncharted 4's story for you. So we got Nathan Drake, a retired adventurer, who is forced into one last adventure when his long-lost brother Sam, who he thought to be dead, comes back.
Sam! Oh, all right. Take it easy.
Having escaped from prison with the help of a gang lord. So because of this, Sam now owes a huge debt to that gang lord and needs to pay him off with a lot of money in a very, very short amount of time. And the best way to do that is, of course, to find Henry Avery's secret treasure that is hidden away on a secret island in an ancient lost city. Meanwhile, there is, of course, a villain named Rafe who is also after this treasure and who has also hired a private military group called Shoreline. And Rafe is a billionaire. He's someone who's been handed everything throughout his entire life. And now he wants to prove that he can get something done by himself, without the help of his parents, and become as prominent in the history books as his parents were. Now, as far as villains go in the Uncharted series, Rafe is easily the most fleshed out and motivated character of them all. But moving on from that, after a lot of globe-trotting, action, and puzzle solving, we learn that the treasure is on an island in Madagascar. And while we're there, we learn that Sam lied to Nate, and that he didn't actually escape from prison, but that instead, Rafe bailed Sam out of prison. Rafe did this so that Sam would help him find the treasure, since Rafe was having a little bit of trouble. But Sam ran away from Rafe and recruited Nate so that they could find the treasure and get all the glory to themselves. And Sam made that story up to try and light that fire under Nate's ass to make him want to come and help him. And I actually felt like this was a very effective twist, because instead of listening to Sam's lie in a cutscene, instead of hearing it from him directly, what happens is you actually play through his lie. So since I played through it and experienced it, in my head, as far as I was concerned, that whole prison escape had happened because I was there and I partook in it, you know? Now, maybe I'm a dum-dum. Maybe I should have seen it coming from a mile away, and I'm sure some people did, absolutely. But I was immersed enough in the game and the story that I wasn't thinking about what was going to happen next. I was always just caught up in the moment, you know? Anyway, Nate saves his brother, defeats the bad guy, and all the treasure sinks to the bottom of the ocean. Cut to an epilogue, which is absolutely fantastic. And I won't show it or talk about it here, just in case you haven't played the game, but it was a great way to close out Nathan Drake's portion of the franchise. And I say that because you just know that Sony's going to give this franchise to some other game studio to try and make some more money off of it. But the epilogue was also just a great way to bring a satisfying conclusion to a 4-game series. Now, I left a lot out of this story, just in case after seeing this video you do want to go and play it, you'll still be able to go through it and experience some surprises and things like that. I just wanted to lay out the gist of both stories because it's important to how we are comparing these two games. But part of what makes these cutscenes so great is the top-notch acting. Everybody involved takes their role very seriously, and the cast has just built up a really great chemistry with one another over the years. You could not find a better person to play Nathan Drake than Nolan North. I would argue that Nathan Drake was the character that Nolan North was born to play. He plays that character to perfection. He's so in tune with that character that Nolan North actually has a degree of control over some of the dialogue that Nate will have before it gets written into the game.
And then it was a conversation. And a lot of times, you know, we're coming in with scenes before we even get on the mocap stage. We do a table read, and Nolan's like, "Nate will never say that. You know, I wouldn't say that." And we work on it and we change it.
Now, on the flip side of things, and just hear me out before you get angry with me, okay? But I find Lara Croft really annoying in these reboots. The way she talks just really gets to me. She sounds so breathy, and she over-enunciates a lot, and she's just so whiny.
The myth of the prophet is real. Dad was right.
But they want her to seem tough, and they want her to seem believable. And it just, I don't think it works. But just to get a female perspective on the matter, I showed my girlfriend a few of the cutscenes from this game, and she also found Lara to be annoying. So part of the problem, I think, was who they chose to play Lara Croft, which is this chick right here, Camilla Luddington. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure she's a fine actor. I mean, she certainly looks the part. I just don't think that she fits the part very well. Now, that's not to say she gives a bad performance, because she does not. She just gives a passable performance, and I'm not trying to make Camilla look bad or insult her as an actress or anything like that. I honestly chalk up her performance to whoever was in charge of directing her. But like I said, I really don't think that Camilla is a good fit to play Miss Croft. And I felt that way as I played through the first game as well. But do you want to know who would be a great fit to play Lara Croft? This chick right here, Elodie Yung. When I first saw her in Season 2 of Daredevil, I immediately thought to myself, oh my god, she would make a perfect Lara Croft. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Ren, you're nothing but tub meat and an idiot. Lara Croft is white. Elektra from Daredevil is not white. Well, to that I say, take a quick look at this lady right here. This is Laura Bailey. And as you can tell, she is in fact white. Yet, in Uncharted 4, she portrays Nadine, that big, buff, and tough, rough black chick. And you know, I honestly didn't even know that until after I had beaten the game. I had no clue that a whitey was playing a blackie. And that's the beauty of mocap and voice acting. Anybody can play anyone or anything. But Elodie Yung is perfect for what Crystal Dynamics are going for with Lara's character. They want Lara to be strong and courageous, yet vulnerable and flawed at the same time. These are traits that Elodie has proven that she can pull off.
I'm gonna kill him. And if you get in my way, Matthew, I'm gonna kill you too. And yes, that's why I loved you. That's why you loved me too. Don't deny what we have.
Not only that, but Elodie has that perfect accent that you look for in Lara Croft. That sort of uppity, sort of posh British accent, you know? And on top of that, Elodie also has a black belt in karate, which would mean that she would be able to do nearly all of the physicality herself, since she's capable of that. Kinda like how Nolan North does almost all the mocap for Nathan Drake, and that adds another layer of believability to the character. So for all of these reasons, I think that Elodie is more than qualified to play Lara Croft. In fact, at this point in time, I do not think anybody else out there could do it better. But to get back on track, what I'd like to do right now is compare the two games' climaxes against one another. I think this will really help put everything in perspective for you guys so that you can see where I'm coming from. In the climax of Uncharted 4, Nathan Drake and Rafe have a sword fight inside a burning pirate ship. It is kinda quick-timey, and it does go on a couple of minutes too long for my taste, but it is a visual spectacle, and it feels like a proper climax. The choreography is great, the banter is fun.
On guard, dickhead.
That's the spirit. You know how to sword fight?
Yeah. Sticky with the sharp end, right?
Oh, this should be fun.
And the fight itself feels tense. And I also like the way the villain dies. I think it's very fitting, if a little bit too on the nose.
You want the treasure, Rafe? It's all yours.
But here's the thing, Tomb Raider's climax is able to top Uncharted's and then some, okay? What they came up with for Tomb Raider's climax is truly amazing. So let me give you some context here. Lara and the villain are in this room. This room's on fire. And Constantine, the main villain, is trying to hunt Lara down. But the thing is, Lara doesn't have any weapons. She lost them all in the previous cutscene, where she got hit. That's right, Constantine is so freaking strong and scary that he evaporated all of Lara's equipment with just one smack of his rifle. So since you don't have any weapons, you gotta use your wits, and your combat knife, which luckily didn't evaporate in the hit, in order to defeat Constantine. So, what you gotta do is find a cup that's laying on the floor, okay? And then you take this cup and you throw it to distract him. Then when he's checking out that cup that you threw on the floor, like a badass genius, you come up to him and you stab him in the back. Then there's a nice little quick time event, and that's it. After that, he has a little monologue. While he's talking, though, you can decide whether or not you want to shoot the guy. I didn't shoot him. Instead, I chose to kill him quietly, unseen from the shadows, when he least expected it, like a ninja. But yeah, I felt like the rushed and piss-poor climax of Tomb Raider really embodied the effort put into the story as a whole. So with that, I gotta give Uncharted the point for storytelling.
Now we're talking!
And that's where I'm gonna end part 1. While it may look like Uncharted just might win the whole entire thing, trust me, it's still anybody's game. I do a rapid-fire session at the end of part 2, which will be out in about a week, possibly even sooner than that. But I hope you enjoyed part 1. If you did, make sure to leave a like on the video, as it really helps out a small channel like mine get some much needed growth. And if you got a friend who loves or hates either of these two games, go ahead and send them this video. And if you don't, why not just tweet it around for fun? Because this video has literally consumed my life for the past couple of weeks. We're talking 200 or so hours of work here. And because this video was the video that I always wanted to make when I hit 1,000 subscribers. But a few weeks ago, my Dead Rising 4 video just blew up, and we kind of just soared over 1,000 subs like it was nothing, which is absolutely amazing, and I can't thank all of you guys enough for sticking around. It seriously, really means a lot. So that's why I'm putting everything I've got into this video, because you guys only deserve the very best. And I want to give each game the time and recognition they deserve. Anyway, if you'd like to reach me, check me out on my Twitter. I've also got a Facebook now. You can contact me there. But until then, I'll see you guys next week in part 2. Bye-bye.